I can't do this, Lord. I need you. I was crying on the floor. It was hard times.
Welcome to this week's episode of the His Hill Podcast. My name is Kelly Doherty, and I'm your host. Today, I have a guest with us that I have been wanting to have her on for a long time, and finally got around to asking her. And I had to wait for the right moment because I knew that she would be hesitant. So I waited till we were in church. So everybody feels extra pressure in church, right? No, I'm just kidding. Today, we have Patsy McCall. Patsy is Charlie McCall's wife, and she's been a friend for over 30 years now. She's very content just staying in the background, but she is such a servant. She has such a good heart and wants the best for people, and she's always available, for whatever the Lord would have before her. She was reluctant to do this, but she thought about it briefly, and she just kind of smiled, and she says, okay. So anyway, Patsy, welcome here.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you, Patsy. Thanks for doing this. Patsy, I've already said that we've known each other for over 30 years, and so I'm actually excited about this interview because I'm going to learn more about you. We've known each other for over 30 years, and we've experienced, along with the staff, with Charlie and Arlene, we've experienced some pretty funny things. We've laughed together, and then we've gone through some trying things together too on staff, and have always seen the Lord's faithfulness. And but I've never really asked you much about your childhood, your background. It's just whatever I picked up on in conversations, but this is going to be fun for me because it's a lot more purposeful. So for the listener's sake, let's start with your childhood, your upbringing. Tell us where you're from.
Well, I'm from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, more specifically Washington Borough.
Okay.
Which is down by the river.
Okay. What river?
Susquehanna.
Okay. I got to speak at a youth retreat one time up there, and I think it was your home church, and so it was. I was just really the first time I'd ever been in that area, and it's really a beautiful area. It's as a matter of fact, Lizzie's here with us. She's sitting here with us while we're doing this interview, and Lizzie's also from the same area. Just thought about that. Patsy, tell us about your family. What kind of a family? How big was the family?
Well, to start, my dad is one of 9 brothers, the Funk brothers. And so they all lived within 5 miles of each other in Washington Borough area. And my dad was an excavator. There were 4, I think, that were excavating, and the other 5 were farmers. And my dad would go off to work. He put us kids to work on the farm with my uncles growing up.
Okay. And how many siblings did you have? 5. Okay.
I'm the oldest of 5.
Okay. Now, with all the brothers, your uncles and all their kids, I've asked this question of many Funks, but none of them can give me an answer. Do you know how many of you there are?
Well, I think I've got it right. There's 33 of us, counting me.
Okay. And when the whole family gets together, the family gets together once a year for a conference, right? A Bible conference.
No, it's for Thanksgiving dinner. Okay. And they get together.
Okay. How many of them?
Well, I think I heard there were at least 160 or 70 this past, but that's not near everybody because they don't all go.
Wow. That's incredible. So growing up in this family, this is a Christian family. So you would have grown up in church. You would have grown up hearing the gospel. When did you come to know Christ?
Well, I remember the time and place. I think I was 10 or 11.
Okay.
And I was in Sunday school, and the teacher was talking again, like I'd heard many times, about giving my heart to Jesus, and I determined at that point I needed to do that and felt like I needed to come into the kingdom. But I think back on it, it was a lot of fire insurance that I didn't want to go to hell.
Okay.
But I still had lived a pretty good life, and by the time this is moving on, but when I was in high school, I guess you'd say I dedicated my life to the Lord and really was giving myself over to Him fully.
Okay. All right. And you said that was about high school time.
Yeah, in 11th grade.
Okay. How did that bring any changes in life for you?
I had some friends that I was doing things with, and I was with this one girlfriend one time, and I realized I shouldn't be where I am. And this is just, I couldn't keep going that direction, and so that's what really prompted me to give myself fully to the Lord.
Okay. So the Holy Spirit was working in your heart, and it was obvious to you.
Yeah.
That's neat. What were some of your interests at this time? Was the Lord giving you direction in anything, or?
Yeah, we had a lot of missionaries in our church. We had a missions conference every year, and I always enjoyed hearing about people from other lands. And so in thinking about what I wanted to do as I grew up, I thought, well, I could be a nurse. I can help take care of people and be a missionary nurse. So that's what was in my head. I was going to be a missionary nurse.
Okay.
So high school, I was taking classes that were into the field that I would take nursing.
Okay. And then you went on to be a nurse. What was, how long of a process was that?
Well, after high school, I went to nursing school in Lancaster.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 3-year program. I was roommates with a girl that I had gone to elementary school with all the way through high school, and had some really wonderful friends there. I became a part of Nurses Christian Fellowship, and that was a real stronghold for me. Not that I was being pulled away, but those group of friends were really wonderful in my life.
And you ended up becoming an RN.
Yes.
And did you work as an RN after this?
Yes, I went to work at the hospital afterwards, the night shift, and it was sometime during that time that Ronnie Turpin came to speak at our church for meetings, and he asked me to be the camp nurse at his hill.
Okay.
And I decided that I shouldn't.
Okay, that you shouldn't?
I shouldn't.
Okay, so you didn't do it.
No, because I was just getting out of nursing school, and I thought I need to work as a nurse and not be responsible for a bunch of campers when I haven't even worked outside in the world.
Okay.
So I said no.
So how long did you work as a nurse in a hospital?
Well, total probably, while I was up there, maybe 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that profession, can you remember anything that the Lord was teaching you in all of that? Was he showing you things? Was he stretching you? Was he showing you things about himself in that work?
Well, I was learning to trust him with patients that I had, and to be bold in sharing Jesus with them. And while I worked there, I would take vacations. I went to Haiti one time, and it was during that, after the trip to Haiti, that one of the doctors started questioning me, like, why did you go there? And what was your purpose in doing that? And he was really searching for the Lord.
Really?
And through all that, it's a long story, he and his wife came to know the Lord.
Oh, wow.
And my other cousin and her husband got involved with them to lead them to Jesus. And so it was wonderful that he came to know the Lord. Other coworkers, I would tell them about Jesus, but none of them would turn their hearts to him.
I appreciate that story, because so often I think we compartmentalize our lives. This is our Christian life, this is our time for Jesus, and then this is my profession, this is my work life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to be good in it, I need to live right, but we don't really see it as the life of Christ. It's easy for us to see that church is time for the life of Christ, Bible study is the time for the life of Christ, but also in our workplace.
Yeah.
And that's something that, theoretically I've always known, but something that the Lord has really made very prevalent in our family business now. That and it just blows my mind that the Lord can use a business like ours, which is a cosmetic company, for ministry. And it's amazing how the Lord will use that to draw people to Himself. You would think makeup is the last place, that the Lord would be interested in doing anything like that. But no, I mean, if we say that Christ is my life, then what we mean is Christ is my life. Whether it's being a nurse, being a business owner, or being a pastor.
Right.
That he's our life, and we need to encourage each other in this, to be walking with Him, available to Him for whatever in any situation at any time. So that's a really neat testimony to, as you're just going about the next thing that day, being a nurse, that the Lord would bring you into that time of being of influence that way in someone's life. Didn't even know the Lord, but he and his wife both come to know the Lord.
Yeah.
What an exciting thing to talk about. So you were working in a hospital and some short-term mission work. How did you end up? You eventually did come to His Hill as the nurse, right?
Yes, I did. So one of my times that I went away, I came to His Hill to visit my cousin Paula, who had come to be the camp nurse that summer.
Okay.
She had said yes. So I came, she stayed for Bible school, and I came to visit her, and they asked me again if I would be the camp nurse the next summer. And so that was the second summer of camp, and I came.
Okay. What year was that?
1987.
1987. Okay, you were the nurse. And how many years did you do that?
I was the nurse 5 summers, not 5 consecutive summers.
Okay, but 5 summers altogether. And now, being here as the nurse, I'm assuming that's how you met Charlie.
It is. I first met him when I came to visit Paula.
Okay.
And met his brother David and his parents, I think I met during that time.
Okay. And how did the two of you end up getting together?
Well, we worked in camp that very first summer together, and then I was in Bible school, and that whole time I was here, I was not going to be interested in guys.
Okay.
So,
excuse me. So you actually were a student.
I stayed on at the end of the summer to be a student.
Okay. See, now that's something new for me. I never knew that you were a student here at His Hill. So you were. Okay. Great. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's right. So Charlie would come up from Bernie to visit because his brother Steve was here in school with his wife Helen, and he was a student with me. So he'd come to visit them, and then he would visit everybody that was here. So that's how I got to know him better. So the second summer after Bible school was over, I dropped my guard to date.
Okay.
Because when I came, I had my blinders on. I didn't want to be involved in a relationship, especially in Bible school. Okay.
So the Lord obviously worked in your heart to change that at some point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what year did you and Charlie get married?
1985.
Okay. Now, Charlie was not finished with his education, right?
No, he was in seminary.
Okay. So you were, then you and Charlie, he had already started seminary, did he?
Yes, he was in it. I think he had been in it 4 years.
Okay. And so you were with him toward the end of it. Did you work as a nurse while he was a student?
Yes.
Okay.
We lived in Dallas, and I worked part-time at a hospital that was close to the seminary, so he'd drop me off at work, and then he'd go study before classes started.
Okay.
Because we had one car.
Okay. And so he finished up. Now, let me tell me about this, because earlier, your thinking was that maybe that you would be a nurse on the mission field. Mm-hmm. And so now you're married to Charlie, and this was not the direction that Charlie was going in. I don't think he was against that. I think he was pretty much open to what the Lord was going to do, but eventually, you guys ended up here. Was there anything was there anything in your heart that you had to go through with that to to make that change?
Yes, we have to back up way back
Okay.
to when we dated that first summer, and then by November we broke up. We
Okay.
felt like God was leading us in two different directions. He was headed to the pastorate, maybe. I was headed to the mission field.
Okay.
So we broke up. But we continued to communicate by letters once in a while and phone calls even once in a while over the years. And I think it's about 4 years later. Well, we worked in camp together, but we were not dating during that time. And he was going to work at a camp in North Carolina where I had been working as a nurse in a boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
So he came up there, and it was 2 weeks overlap while I was still working up there. I was going to leave there and come work at His Hill at the end of the summer. So we were both going to be in different places. He was going to be in North Carolina. I was going to be in Texas. And so that started the ball rolling for us to get back together again. He said, I feel like God brought us back together, and I would like to pursue our relationship toward marriage. And so I had to work through all of that because I was going to be doing candidate school for Mission Board in the summertime.
Oh, wow.
And came to His Hill, did the candidate school, still working through all that. And God began to show me that He can use me wherever I am. He just, I think, wanted me to be available to be where He wanted me to be, and to be willing to be single if I needed to be single. And so I had gotten to that point. I'll go to the mission field to Papua New Guinea, which is where I thought I was headed, and to just go single. And then here God just puts it back in my plate. So it was a lot of prayer to get through that. But I think a lot of what helped me to see that God was putting us together was people that knew both of us. And they've said, they think God's putting us together.
Okay. That's neat. I appreciate it. As you were speaking, it reminded me of something that Major Thomas used to constantly encourage us with, is that we haven't been called to a ministry. He doesn't call us to, a position or to a place. He calls us to Himself.
Yes.
And when for me to live is Christ. It's to abide in Him, and then allow Him to take us where we need to be. And I know that's that's for all of us. I've experienced that, where that can be a real struggle, because in my flesh, I want everything compartmentalized. I want to have I want to have all my ducks in a row and know exactly where I'm going. I remember graduating from Bible college and thinking that same thing, that obviously I'm going to be in a church ministry. So I started to look, and I couldn't find anything, and I was very frustrated. Knocked on a lot of doors, made a lot of phone calls, passed out a lot of resumes, and there was just nothing coming back. Arlene and I called up my former youth pastor. I just needed some counsel, and so we met him at a Denny's restaurant. And I looked at him and said, "Del, I'll do whatever God wants me to do. What? I mean, why won't He just light up this bush and tell me?" It's not like He hasn't done that before. And Del was his name. He said, Kelly, it's interesting that you say that, because God could light that bush up. He's done it. But the problem is, He could light the bush up, tell you where He wants you to be, what He has in store for you. And by the time your hand touches the front door, you'll already have a plan yourself as to how you'll get there. And, the Lord, that was, early on with the Lord starting to teach me that, this life is my life, not your life. Trust me for my life. And you get to go with me. You get to be with me. And it sounds, when I say that, it sounds like, well, that's such a simple, it is a simple thing, but it sounds like it's such an easy thing. But dying to yourself, your expectations, your plans, is a hard thing. But we find that the Lord is sufficient for that even. Yeah. So that's neat. Yeah. So he made the changes, and you decided that you would marry Charlie, that you would go with him. How did you guys end up at His Hill?
He was finishing up seminary in December, and we came to Thanksgiving conference in November. And prior to that time, he was trying to fill out a resume for sending to places, but he just didn't have any leads of where we would even try to go to be in a church or whatever. So we were here for Thanksgiving, and Major Thomas sat us down with Sonny and Bill, and he said, Sonny's going to be moving to a ministry in San Antonio. Bill's going to become the director, and we'd like Charlie to be the camp director. And we were really shocked because we thought we'd never come back here.
Wow.
After him being in seminary. And so we didn't take long to pray about that, but within a few short weeks, we were going to be like, what are we going to do next? And so we came in January of 87.
So it happened very quickly.
It did.
Without even seeing it coming.
Yeah.
Wow. And what year was that, you said?
We started in January of 87.
In 87. Okay. Wow. And so you didn't know you'd be here, and now you've been here since 87. Yeah. That's incredible. What was the transition like for you coming onto staff?
Well, it was just a joy to be here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And it wasn't long, and your family started to grow. You guys had 4 kids in 5 years, right? In
4.5 years.
In 4.5 years,
right.
Okay. So all of a sudden, the car is full.
Yes. Yep.
So you have 3 boys, 1 girl. 2 of them, Michael and Audrey, are on staff with you guys.
Yeah.
Audrey's a cook. Michael is in charge of finances. And what are some things the Lord has taught you about being a mom?
Well, a lot. My mother had 5 kids, so I thought, I can do it. And I learned pretty quickly as they, had one, Nathan, he was an easy baby, so then at number 2, and then by the time of Ryan coming, it was just, I can't do this, Lord. I need you. I was crying on the floor. It was hard times.
Yeah, well, they were so close together.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were 3 boys. They are still to this day. They're all boy. Yeah. And all of their boys are all boys.
Yeah.
Okay. So then finally you had a girl, and
yeah, we thought we'd have another boy, but we're thankful for the little girl God gave us.
And the Lord worked in your heart that you needed Him for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned my just total desperate need for Jesus. And I think the kids learned from seeing my desperate need for Him and crying out to Him that they needed Him too.
Wow. So you're being an example without knowing you were being an example in the midst of a trial.
Right.
Yeah, that's neat. And our quick reminders right now, which is these short episodes we have. One that I just recorded before you came in, and we're talking about the trials and what the Lord's doing with them. And this actually the episode that I just recorded was on that one word in James 1 verse 4, let. And it's a word that we can just read right over, and let endurance have its perfect result. And it's a word that I've looked at for years. Charlie had me teach it for 23 years straight. And I've looked at it, and I've always made a passing comment. I've always said, it's a big word, 3 letters, but I never said any more about it. And just in looking at it, it does mean how we use it. It's got nothing to do with what I'm doing. It's not up to me to turn these trials into something. But to by faith, let the Lord do in us what He wants to do. And it's always the same thing. It's always to reveal Christ.
Yeah.
It's always to show us our need of Him and His faithfulness to us. And that's what you're saying, that He used this to bring you to a point where I can't do this.
Right.
I need you. And what a blessing it's been, 4 great kids, and you have how many grandchildren now?
We have 11.
Wow. and they're all just as precious, as they can be. You just had a brand new one come in now.
Well, two pretty
that's
new
right.
ones.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So that's exciting to see how the Lord's doing that. Now, so you guys have been on staff for quite a while now, and it's what are some things, if you think back, you came on staff. How many years has it been now?
I think it's 38.
Okay, so 38 years, and wow, seems like just yesterday we celebrated the 35 anniversary. So, but okay, so 38, and so you came on, and you've had to grow. You guys were with a group of people for a long time. I was part of that group, and they all left, and now you have a new group, and they're all, it's like very, very young, starting over again with a new group. What are some things, over those years that do you see how the Lord has maybe changed your role here, or changed how He uses you here, or what are some things the Lord's just done in your heart over those 38 years?
I don't know if there's been any changes other than just to be who I am. I did have to grow in getting in front of people when we started having the ladies' retreats regularly. I forget how many years ago that was. And I remember a friend saying, Patsy, you just need to get up there and do it and be the one to introduce the guest speaker and introduce each session and all those things. But now it's been a joy to be able to pass that along. And Heather's been doing that now.
Yeah, I remember your reluctance to that.
Yeah.
And I do remember how you had to just take a breath and trust the Lord and get up there. Yeah. And I remember Arlene being very positive about you doing it and how you had, how you carried yourself in that time, and the Lord just showed Himself sufficient in that. That's great. Patsy, now that you're a grandmother, what you talked about, what the Lord had to do in your heart as a mother. Does the Lord continue to teach you things now as a grandmother?
I would say yes. I have all these ideas of how things worked or didn't work for me, but I have to keep them to myself a lot of time and just wait for my daughters-in-law to ask if they need any advice for how to do this or that, because they all have their own way of doing things. So I've learned to just take it to the Lord.
Yeah. I think as I get older, the Lord teaches me the same thing. That there's
be quiet.
Yeah. Just to be quiet and let the Lord do what He's going to do. If He needs me to say something, there'll be the opportunity to say something.
Right.
And so I think it's interesting. You think I don't know about you, but I keep thinking at some point, I know this isn't right, but I live like at some point in life, I'm going to reach a place where I don't need to learn anything. But I think the Lord just gets tickled over that, because He's so faithful to keep teaching.
Right. And
it's exciting to think that we're never going to come to that point where we say, okay, I've got it.
Yeah.
I think we'll spend eternity with the Lord, continuing to explore and learn of the depths of just who God is and what it means for Him to be my life. And that's really exciting to think about, because it means we'll never reach a point where we understand. We've got God figured out.
Right.
And to me that's exciting, because how wonderful would He be if we could ever reach that place, where we are equal, where we've got Him figured out, but we never will. And so that to me is an encouragement to learn to abide in Him, to let Him have His way, to trust Him in any situation. Well, Patsy, thanks for doing this. You've probably been living in fear that I was going to ask you at some point. And I I just really appreciate you being willing to do this.
You're welcome. It's been a joy to be here.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the His Hill podcast featuring our host, Kelly Doherty, along with Patsy McCall. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. Our students returned from spring break on Sunday and began classes again on Monday. Everything has returned to the normal we knew before break quite quickly, and it has been a delight to have the students back on campus. There are 8 weeks left in the semester before our students graduate and summer staff training begins. Please be praying for us here these last 2 months, that we would all let Him work in us and be tender to His voice. Once again, you've been listening to the His Hill podcast featuring our host, Kelly Doherty, along with Patsy McCall. Remember to keep your eyes fixed on Christ. He is the way, the truth, and the life. I'm Lizzie, and we'll see you next week.